Welcome. I'm the Gothic Librarian. Take a seat and let's begin. So, this was told to me by an old family friend, Nikki, numerous times as a kid growing up, as one of those life advice stories to keep in mind through the years. And to her credit, I have never forgotten it. Whenever anything associated with hitchhiking comes up, it always springs to mind and probably always will. Makes me a bit ill whenever I think about it, actually. So, Nikki, who grew up at the same time as my dad, so this was about early 80s, I believe, was a young woman in her mid-20s. She's one of those real kind-hearted souls, always willing to help another out in a time of need, you know? And I can't imagine her being anything other than that when she was younger, so I totally see her doing this too. So, driving into the city, about a 2 hour or so drive out from town, she saw a man walking down the side of the road. As she neared, he turned and, in typical hitchhiker manner, stuck out the old arm and thumb. Nikki, bless her heart, pulled over and asked him if he needed any help. She told me that he was really polite, if not a bit shy, when he asked for a lift into the city. Nikki gave a smile and popped open the passenger door for the guy, who tossed his bag into the back seat and buckled up for the ride ahead. They talked pleasantly for most of the trip, about friends, the news, etc. You know, happy small talk. She felt that they were getting on really well, and even bought him dinner at the pit stop a little over halfway there. She says he seemed really flustered and awkward when she paid, but one of the things they had talked about was money, and how he was pretty dang strapped for cash, which was why he was hitchhiking in the first place. But he eventually relented, and they went on their way. As soon as they got into the city, he thanked her profusely for the ride and the food, and asked to be dropped off once they hit downtown. Before getting out, he asked for Nikki's phone number so he could contact her someday and catch up. Thrilled at the prospect of knowing how her new friend was faring, Nikki wrote it down for him and drove off with the warm feeling of a good deed done. Now, I'm sorry if you were expecting something creepy to have happened by now, but I think this is what freaked me out so much as a kid, how nice everything seemed to have worked out. Nikki gets this crease in her forehead and a funny look in her eye when she tells me the next part. How a week later, she got a phone call from her driving buddy. He didn't let her get a word in edgewise after hello and told her that she should thank God that she was raised so nice, because when he first got in her car, he was planning on raping and murdering her once they got to the pit stop. That he was going to steal that car and dump her body in a ditch further down the road and go on his merry way. But after she talked with him so kindly and treated him to dinner with a smile on her face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't think that he could live with himself after doing that to such a nice lady. And to please, Nikki, please, never, ever pick up another hitchhiker. Then he hung up the phone. Nikki never got a call from him again. When she tried redialing the number, she got a payphone. And so, Mr. Hitchhiker, I know I'm never going to meet you, because I'm going to listen to the advice you gave your driving buddy and never, ever pick up a hitchhiker. Hey Red, bum a smoke? She was standing by the vending machines, so still I almost walked right past her without noticing. Blame it on highway hypnosis. I'd been driving for hours with nothing to focus on except miles of cornfield and the pavement ahead of me. Flat farmland the whole way and not a single interesting bit of roadside flair, unless you counted that broken down old van I passed just before the rest stop with the words "Death Before Disco" painted on the back. "Oh," I said, turning back from the women's bathroom where I'd been heading. "Yeah, sure. Camel okay?" She smiled at me as I dug into my purse for my cigarettes. "Beggars can be choosers, man." She looked like one of those girls going to Coachella, all faux 70s lace and fringe, a cheap Stevie Nicks knockoff. Don't get me wrong, she wore it well. The only accessory missing was a flower crown from American Eagle, but something about those festival chicks just gets under my skin. I handed her a cig, and she stuck it in her mouth at once, motioning impatiently at me with her other hand. "Light?" A little bossy for someone who just said beggars can be choosers, but whatever. I fished out my lighter and held it out to her, but she just pursed her lips and leaned towards me, wanting me to light it for her, like gentlemen do in old movies. The action struck me as very John Crawford-esque, intended to be flirtatious, but coming off as sort of bitchy instead. I clicked the lighter to life, and she inhaled, the cherry of her bummed cigarette glowing bright in the falling light of dusk. She held it in for a long moment like she hadn't had a smoke in a while, then exhaled grandly. "Ugh, thank you," she said, pushing a lock of dark hair away from her face with her free hand. "I needed that like you wouldn't believe." "No problem." She was looking at me kind of funny now, squinting a little like there was more to say, but in my opinion the cigarette was more than enough, so I gave her a wave and went back to the bathroom to do what I'd pulled into the rest stop for in the first place. When I came out again, she was still there, leaning against the vending machine, blowing out slow clouds of thick white smoke into the evening air. I felt weird just ignoring her, but I didn't really have time for strained conversation with a stranger. I needed to get back on the road. "Have a good one," I told her lamely as I headed for my car. "Hey, Red, wait!" She took another long drag on her cigarette and ashed it onto the cement. "I had to ask, but I'm sort of stuck here. You think you might give me a ride?" "Okay, two things. One, I don't give rides to hitchhikers. It's a thing for me. As a young woman, I just don't feel very safe with a stranger in my car, no matter how nice their handwritten cardboard signs might be. Two, I hate being called Red. I hate it. Yeah, ha fucking ha, my hair is red. You're absolutely the first person who's ever given me that extremely clever nickname. The only thing worse than red is fire crotch. And believe me, during high school I heard them both more than I care to recall. So, these things taken into account, you'd think I would have done the smart thing and said no. Gotten back in my car and headed down the road, leaving who I was already think of as #Coachella chick in my rearview mirror. But something strange happened. I opened my mouth to tell her I was sorry, and instead I found myself saying, "How far do you need to go?" Her eyes lit up. "Not far, man, not far." She took another quick drag. "I mean, as far as you want to take me, but if I could just get to a gas station or something, it'd help me out a lot." Shit. Shit. Why had I said that? I had no intention of offering this girl a ride, but the words had come out of me without any warning, almost like something else had compelled me to say them. I should have felt it then, the sick tug on my gut of something being very wrong, but I didn't, and that's why I'm telling you this story. She must have seen the look on my face, because she stuck the cigarette between her lips, raised her arms, and did a little twirl for me. Her boho skirt followed the curve of her legs, the fringe of her vest fanning out prettily. Don't got any weapons, see? Nowhere to put them. She was right. No pockets, no bag, and I doubted there was a knife stashed in the crop top between her meager cleavage. She turned back to me and grinned. You can freeze me if you want. I blushed a little when I realized she probably saw me staring at her tits. Oops. Which was more awkward, being caught looking or trying to explain I actually was scanning her for deadly weapons. I shifted my purse uncomfortably from shoulder to shoulder. Okay, I said, resigned to the fact that I'd backed myself into a corner. I think there's a gas station in about 10 miles, a few exits down. I'll drop you off there if that's fine with you. Super fine, she agreed, and I gestured to my car. Needlessly, I might add, it was the only one in the lot. While we'd been talking, the sun had set, and the overhead lights came on, giving the mostly abandoned rest stop a spooky sort of feeling. All shadows and contrast, no sound but the occasional vehicle zooming by on the highway. Suddenly, I was ready to hit the road again, get far away from this place. How long had the hitchhiker been stuck here? I didn't envy her. Let's go. I slipped behind the wheel of my compact little Malibu and stuck the key in the ignition. My new passenger gave the roof a cheerful slap with the palm of her hand as she hopped in. Getchin', man, thank you so much. You bet. I shifted into gear and merged back onto the highway, feeling better as the rest stop grew smaller and smaller in the distance until it was gone altogether. The hitchhiker leaned back in her seat and put her feet up on the dashboard. I noticed for the first time she wasn't wearing shoes. Her soles were black and filthy. Hey, I started, and as I glanced over at her, I realized a few more things. She wasn't buckled up, and she was still puffing on her cigarette. Great, like the situation wasn't awkward enough. You mind getting rid of that? I don't really smoke in my car. She gave me a look, a dark sidelong look I really didn't like. Then she smiled. Yeah, no sweat. She took one more deep drag and began fumbling around the door for the window controls. I rolled it down for her from my side and watched, satisfied, as she flicked it out into the night. Thanks, I appreciate it, I said, even though she had accidentally exhaled that last drag kind of in my face. You should buckle up too. Geez, Red, you got a lot of rules. She laughed, but there was tension in her voice now, something I hadn't heard back at the rest stop. She didn't reach for the seatbelt and wiggled her dirty toes on my dashboard. I looked at the mile marker. Only 8 more miles until the gas station exit. I could make it until then. A few long moments of silence passed between us before the hitchhiker said suddenly, Where you headed, Red? I fucking hate being called Red. Oh, just home, I said, not wanting to give her more information than I had to. Visited a friend out of town, so, just heading home. Oh, she said thoughtfully. She shifted in her seat, put her feet back on the floor. That's cool, man, that's cool. She paused, turned around briefly to glance out the back window, then said, Except you're never gonna make it. Before I could even process this, something slammed into my bumper from behind. My car lurched forward, and I heard an engine being gunned loudly. The fuck? I gripped the wheel tight, struggling to stay on the road. My eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror. Behind me, right on my ass, was a bright red van. One of the ones that don't have windows on the side, sort of like the mystery machine from Scooby-Doo. I only had a split second to register what was painted on the hood. A cartoon devil with his middle finger in the air, pointed tail, looping through the words "Death Before Disco," before the van fell back, revved its engine, and rammed into us again. The hitchhiker was laughing, a weird high-pitched screamy sort of laugh. "You fucked up, Red! You really fucked up!" she cried, pounding her fists on the dashboard. I remembered the van from the side of the road. It had the same thing painted on the back, without the little cartoon devil, but it had been old, rusted, red paint faded to a salmon pink. All the tires were flat. It was a piece of junk. I had briefly wondered if it was even legal to leave something that dilapidated on a highway. Yet, this van was as new as if it had rolled right off the lot, shiny as a candy apple and in perfect shape, according to the roar of its engine in my ears. I swerved into the left lane and it followed seamlessly, dropping back only to advance on me again. My foot pressed the gas pedal towards the floor, and we surged forward, but the van wasn't far behind. "What the fuck is this?" I shouted, wheeling my shitty little car to go faster. The speedometer's needle was at 90 and wavering. "They're gonna mess you up, man," the hitchhiker cried triumphantly. She was alternating between bouncing in her seat and twisting to look at the van as it got closer. "They're gonna fuck you up, Red. Just you wait, my boys are gonna get you, and when they do, they're gonna do things to you, crazy things." A crunch of metal as the van rammed us again. In my rearview mirror, the cartoon devil gave me the bird. Death Before Disco. "They're gonna kill us!" I tried swerving right this time, close to the guardrail, but the van followed suit. It was like it wasn't even trying, not all that hard, a cat playing lazily with a crippled mouse. "No, not right away," she said, a sick sort of glee in her voice. "I mean, you'll wish they did. My boys got all kinds of appetites and they're fucking sure gonna play with you, Red. They're gonna have a good time with you. Good thing you picked me up back there. I was stuck at that shithole rest stop, but now we're gonna have such a good time." I blew past the exit for the gas station, going too fast to take it, and not entirely sure what I would do if I did. The van fell back a bit. My heart was hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure if I could force her out of the passenger side, but I knew I had to keep driving. If I stopped, I couldn't stop. That much was certain. I stomped on the gas, putting pedal to the metal for the first time in my life. My car's engine whined in protest, but I put some distance between us, the speedometer heading towards 100, 110. She was laughing now, stamping her filthy bare feet like a kid at the circus. I glanced at her, prepared to tell her to shut the fuck up, when I saw that suddenly she didn't look like a privileged rich girl heading to Coachella, not one bit. Her clothes were as dirty as her feet, her hair clumped in black tangled mats. There was something on her face. I was thrown forward as the van crashed into my bumper again. Knuckles white, I turned the wheel back towards the white lines, trying to stay on the road. "What's the matter, Red?" she whispered, creeping towards me, her lips right next to my ear. "Look like you seen a ghost." A stench washed over me, wet garbage and decaying fish, a centuries-old grave freshly pried open. I gagged, but there was no time to be sick. I had to drive. I couldn't stop. I didn't want to meet her boys. I swerved left, scraping the side of my car against the concrete wall that divided the highway, the Malibu shuddering violently as we sped on. The hitchhiker began cackling again, and I chanced one more look at her face. Most of her left cheek had been blown away, exposing the teeth and bone in their gleaming white glory. Blood oozed from the wound and pattered down in thick red drops across her crop top, her fringed vest, her boho skirt. Above the meager cleavage I checked out such a short time ago, her chest was peppered with what appeared to be bullet holes. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I looked frantically from the gruesome creature in my passenger seat to the van in my rearview mirror, which now looked more like the wreck I'd seen on the side of the road. Rust spread across the metal like an exotic mold. The cartoon devil and Death Before Disco were rendered almost unreadable by a spray of bullet holes, much like the ones on the hitchhiker's chest. I couldn't see who was behind the wheel of the van. The window was black, shiny, a dark mirror reflecting back the ass end of my battered car, but I was suddenly wildly sure that the boys looked a lot like my passenger, complete with mortal injuries and breath that smelled like utter raking death. "We're gonna have fun with you, man," she said in a low, gurgling voice, playing nonchalantly with a strand of my hair as I drove for my life. "We're fucking sure gonna have fun playing with you. Tell me, does the carpet match the drapes? Red?" To my left, the concrete divider of the highway fell away. The hitchhiker was leaning closer to me, pressing her rotting body against mine, halfway across the center console. And then I remembered. I turned towards her, forcing myself to look at her destroyed, dripping face. "I fucking hate being called red," I hissed, and wrenched the wheel to the left, sending us hurtling into a ditch separating the highways. My poor old Malibu bounced and shook as we thundered towards my target, a small cluster of trees. I didn't have time to see if the van had followed me, but I did see the expression on the hitchhiker's ruined face, shocked, furious, and a little scared, just before she went flying through the windshield. I was alright for the most part, physically speaking anyway. Bruises, cuts, typical car crash injuries. The place where my seatbelt locked hurt like a bitch for a few weeks, but hey, my seatbelt is why I survived. The guy who called the ambulance said he saw the crash. He'd pull over to change a flat, and I went speeding past him like a bat out of hell, right into the ditch. He didn't mention a red van, new or otherwise, because he didn't see one. I don't know for sure what happened that night. I don't know how or when that hitchhiker and her boys died, but I know they did, and I know they didn't go out peacefully. I'm sure I could do research and probably come up with some answers, but I don't because a part of me doesn't want to know. Here's what I do know. I'll never stop at that rest stop again. I'll never pick up another hitchhiker. And I'll never tell the police, no matter how many times they ask me, where the candy apple red paint chips on my bumper came from. Thank you for checking in at the Gothic Library. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a thumb up and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you at my next public reading.